How do you think spirituality plays a role in the lives of people with disabilities, contrasted to those without disabilities, especially being involved with events or ceremonies or rituals, etc.?
I'm the kind of person who thinks that spirituality plays a role and should play a role in absolutely everybody's life. But you could make the argument that perhaps somebody who's come in with disabilities would be served by a spiritual experience more so than other people because the amount of contrast they're going through. Most of us find our way to spirituality because of pain or some other kind of contrast. We're experiencing something unwanted. We want to understand why this is happening because we're living in a world where we have to compare ourselves to people who are living much more enjoyable experiences, or so we think. I think for people with disabilities, if they're aware of the disabilities they have, it can become a serious source of pain for them. It can turn into a why me? Why did this happen to me? Why is my luck so bad? And we can use it to feel powerless if we're in that circumstance. And I think that spirituality can serve an extremely beneficial role because it offers the answer to a lot of those questions. It's much more empowering to understand that you chose that experience than to think that you came in and just got unlucky because of some developmental issue that you suffered in the womb, or because of some accident you lined up with. So what I see in the community of people who are encountering disabilities is that spirituality is a super big part of them using the experience they opted into to benefit them, maximizing it instead of using it to inhibit themselves. This is really in the ultimate form is what I love about spirituality. Spirituality sort of offers us the ultimate answer to turning lemons into lemonade. Obviously, if you come down with a disability, especially one that you don't think you can get out of, like I'm paralyzed or like I have cerebral palsy or like, any number of things, we need to learn how to use what we do have. So most of us are focusing, obviously, on what we don't have. We're focusing on the lack. We're focusing on the fact that I can't walk or I can't do what this other person can do. That's only going to inhibit us and make our lives miserable. So if we understand that we chose into the experience, which is really what spirituality is explaining, it's explaining that you are more than just your body and more than just this life. And that you had consciousness before you came into this life, and that you have consciousness after you leave this life. It means that you opted into the experience. So if these people can come face to face with the idea that they might have chosen this, that it gives them the rare opportunity to think about why they might have chosen this. And that flips everything on end. Instead of looking at my life in terms of what I don't have and what I can't do, I'm looking at life in terms of the benefit of what this is doing for me, why it's a good thing, how I can use it to my advantage. One of my very favorite teachers that's incarnated on this earth right now is actually wheelchair bound. He's a paraplegic. And when I asked him about 2 years ago whether if he could choose to walk again, he would, thinking of course the answer is going to be yes, he said no. Of course, he wasn't there in the beginning. He was paralyzed in a rather traumatic motorcycle accident. And after years of being super angry about it, spiraling down into a depressive, suicidal pattern, he actually realized that what he wanted to do was teach people. If he hadn't been wheelchair bound, he probably would be a jock out there competing and racing and really doing nothing of meaning with his life, but it caused him to sit down and really think about things. I mean, this was a guy who got really drunk. This was a guy who did all kinds of things that a typical athlete would do. Slept with a lot of girls. And going through this accident really caused him to question life in general. His life, the meaning of life, everyone else's life, what he wanted to do, what he didn't want to do. And it led him, obviously, ultimately to this position that he's in today, where he's more happy than he ever has been, like ever. Now he gets to talk to people about the meaning of life. He gets to meet people where it really matters, at the heart center. So when I asked him why he would not go back on it, why he would decide to stay paralyzed, he said it's because you gotta understand, I'm a big guy. I'm about 6'5" if I was out of this wheelchair. And people who would come up to me before I got in this accident, were instantly closed, especially men. They would back up from me. So women were a little bit afraid of me and men were threatened, and so I would be met with resistance and walls. And what he said is that ever since he got paralyzed, when he wheels himself into the room, automatically everyone's hearts open. Whether it starts with them feeling sorry for him or whatever else, nobody sees someone in a wheelchair and feels threatened. Nobody sees somebody in a wheelchair and closes their hearts off to them. And because of this interesting place he's in a wheelchair, people are more open to learning from him because of it. And that openness which people have to him automatically makes it so that he actually approves of his position in the wheelchair and wouldn't change it because it benefits him as a teacher. So the reason I say that is because spirituality is ultimately what helped this person understand his plot in life, his purpose, and why all of it happened to him. So he could switch from a place of powerless victimhood to a place of empowerment relative to what he chose for himself in this life. That is really the benefit of a spiritual practice with somebody who has chosen to come down with that kind of a disability, so to speak. We need to start looking at disabilities as abilities, by the way. Unique perspectives are what are causing the expansion of this universe. We can't all come down and think and experience the same and be adding to universal expansion. Universal expansion is dependent upon our unique perspective. And nobody has perhaps as unique a perspective as people with disabilities or alterations in their mindset, alterations in the lifestyle they have to live. It's a profoundly spiritual experience as well to understand the interdependence of this universe, because you have to depend on other people. This is something which I actually love about the community of people who are quote-unquote disabled. In many ways, they may look like they're disabled in terms of independence, but they're incredibly enabled in terms of interdependence, whereas the most of us are not. We harbor the illusion that it's possible for us to exist basically on our own. We're not in an attitude of coexistence. But if you're disabled, especially some disabilities, you literally must depend on other people. It makes it so that you have to open yourself to them. And that is extremely spiritual. That way of being is much more spiritual than being completely independent. So whether that experience, that spiritual experience for a disabled person is taking place via ritual or ceremony, the point is that it's taking place. Whatever that looks like, it's going to benefit somebody on the other end. I'm quite sure of it.